So I want to talk about the power of negativity. Now, that might not seem obvious, given how much has been written and recorded about the power of positivity. If you take a stroll through any bookshop, particularly the self-help section, you'll see that positivity can help you achieve anything: get rich, influence people, even find happiness. And the power of negativity might seem even more counterintuitive, given that I'm from the world of advertising, which is a world of happy couples, spotless kitchens, and smiling dogs, sometimes all in one ad. But the problem is that we've oversaturated advertising with positivity, and it's not working anymore. More than half of all Australians can't remember a single ad they liked, or even one they don't like. And we've made a massive logical error. It's as if we've tried to make advertising more likable by cutting off all the edges, but ultimately we've made it, at best, harmless, but probably useless, which is a giant waste of creativity and a giant waste of money. At its best, creativity isn't supposed to just entertain and tell nice stories, it's supposed to make an impact. At my agency, we say that we want to make things that change things. But to do that, we have to harness the power of negativity. And it's true for advertising, but it's also true in any kind of relationship, and even in innovation. Some of the most revolutionary innovations start with something very negative. For example, these pens. So these pens are, I'd say, a revolutionary idea in the world of stationery. They contain ink that's made from pollution. Now, that ink is called air ink. And it's a project that we worked on with our client, Tiger Beer, and the inventors of the technology behind air ink, Graviki Labs. Now, originally, we were just looking for a way to celebrate creativity from the streets. And we decided that instead of making an ad about it, we should make something useful, a tool for creativity. And we came across Graviki. So, ink from pollution, it's made by fitting carbon harvesting devices to chimneys and exhaust pipes. The carbon's captured before it enters the atmosphere and can then be transformed and purified to make safe, usable ink. We then packaged that up and distributed it to street artists and illustrators all over the world. There are lots of great things about air ink. For a start, it's not just carbon neutral, it's actually carbon negative. Most traditional inks are made by burning fossil fuels. And this one, well, you make it by using fossil fuels that are being burnt anyway and capturing those emissions. Secondly, it can give an otherwise unroadworthy vehicle an extra lease of life. It's very expensive to change out an entire fleet of trucks or lorries. If you fit them with carbon harvesting devices, you can significantly reduce their emissions. And thirdly, it's pretty cost effective. Ink is one of the most expensive liquids in the world to make. It's not quite as expensive as scorpion venom or LSD, but it is more expensive than human blood. But what I think is most interesting about air ink is that it takes something incredibly negative, something that's stifling our cities, something that's killing people, and transforms it into something positive. A tool for self-expression, and maybe a weapon for change. So that's what got me thinking, if we can take something as negative as pollution and transform it into something positive, then maybe we don't need to spend quite so much time hiding from all the negativity around us and sweeping it under the rug. Because ultimately, that's what we do. We've created a massive lie. Negativity isn't inherently good or bad, it's just part and parcel of reality. Where there's light, there's shade. But if you look at the lengths we go to filter out all of the negativity, it's pretty impressive. Who do you think the biggest perpetrators of this lie are? The world of advertising may be partly responsible, but ultimately we all are, or certainly anyone who's on social media. I know that on social media I would never share a bad hair day or a really sad desk supper of chips and gummy bears when I'm stuck late at the office. I'll only share things like nicely plated brunches and sunsets. It might seem innocent, but there's more and more research coming out that shows that when we have endlessly positive feeds of golden moments from our family and our friends, it's associated with feelings of low self-worth, anxiety, and even depression. Just a 1% increase in likes and status updates has been correlated with a 5 to 8% decrease in mental health and wellness. Now, that's a pretty toxic fantasy world, but if we want to break out of it, we're going to have to find a way of dealing with the real-world negativity that we've tried so hard to avoid. So what can we do? Well, in maths and in linguistics, they say two negatives make a positive. So how about we fight fire with fire? Let's not just dare to see the negativity around us for what it is. Why don't we dare to be negative? Now, being negative maybe comes naturally to me because I'm half French. And anyone who's been to France or maybe has been served by a Parisian waiter will know that the French do negativity quite well. And I notice it at home when I speak French. A conversation with my 4-year-old in the morning might go something like, "Come on, darling, it's time to put your shoes on. Allez, vas-y, dépêche-toi maintenant, sinon on va être en retard." Now, you don't need to speak French to realize that all of the negativity I took pains to remove from my English, I just put right back into the French. It just comes out like that, and I couldn't understand why. I do it's almost like a reflex. So I asked around me, and some people said, "Oh, that's just a cultural thing. The French are always unhappy and miserable." It's the French paradox: great quality of life, unhappiness. It may be true, but other people had an interesting explanation, which is that it's a form of intellectual snobbery. For the French, bleak is chic. It's unsophisticated to be overly positive, and you will be looked down on if you're too cheery. I think that's probably also true. But there's something else about why the French love saying no quite so much. And I think it's because time and time again in French history, philosophy, and politics, saying no has been a way to move things forward. It's been a road for progress. Take, for example, the iconic French rebel Joan of Arc. So she said no to her father, who wanted an arranged marriage. She went on to say no to army generals who didn't want a woman on the battlefield. And she went on to say no to English rule and ultimately put an end to 100 years of war and changed the outcome of France. I wonder if she wasn't also the first ad woman, because 400 years before an English playwright ever said, "The pen is mightier than the sword," she's actually quoted as saying, "I trust my banner 40 times better than my sword." She knew the power of words and images. And then you can take someone like the philosopher Descartes. Cartesian philosophy is perhaps the backbone of the French education system. And guess what his entire methodology is based on? Doubt. Being critical, saying no to things. And it's true that you can teach someone a positive skill, and that might get them a job, but if you teach them to be critical, then you teach them to think for themselves. And that's potentially far more dangerous, but far more powerful. And then, of course, there's the French Revolution. So while the American Revolution may have been about saying yes to freedom, to independence, the French Revolution was about saying no to absolute monarchy, and it led to the downfall of absolute monarchies right across Europe, and not just the spread of French citizen rights, the spread of universal human rights. So time and time again, no has been a really powerful way to move things forward and a detonator for change. And what about today? Things may not be nearly as bad as they were in 14th, 17th, or 18th century France, but if we constantly look on the bright side and we only want to see the positive side of things, aren't we settling? Aren't we just assuming that the status quo is okay? Aren't we also making a dangerous assumption that whatever got us here to a situation that's pretty good will continue to make things better? I think we need to dare to be negative and dare to say no if we want to make things better. Or at least that's what I tell myself when I lose my temper in French. But what is true is that all of the positivity washing is very recent. 8 of the 10 commandments were written as negative statements, and that made for pretty sticky, compelling communication. Even in advertising, only in the 1950s, the iconic work of Bill Bernbach used the power of negativity to great effect. In this ad, the car is called a lemon, and it's all about the power of saying no. Saying no to anything less than perfect is a testament to Volkswagen's commitment to quality and excellence. They say no to anything less than perfect coming off the assembly line. We pick out the lemons so you get the plums. Now, that's work from the 50s, but I haven't seen any recent work, for cars certainly, that is this brave. And it may cut through in a world of bland positivity, but it also does something far more important. It creates respect. Because it's only when we dare to acknowledge the negativity and the negative side of things that we can actually create something honest and credible. Even in the way we interact with each other. You can take the example of job interviews. So the question, the cliche that everyone asks is, oh, well, what are your imperfections? Or sometimes we ask, why shouldn't we hire you? And how many times do you get the answer, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, or I'm overly focused? Those don't sound like real weaknesses. Again, it may not seem that important, but those false negatives ultimately undermine the credibility of anything positive that may have been said before. It's only when we know how to really own and acknowledge the true negativity that we can build credibility and respect. And in life, as in advertising, respect comes first, love can follow. Now, it's all, kind of well and good to talk about the power of negativity, and, I may be half French, but there's another half of me that is very British and deeply uncomfortable with the whole idea. It makes me cringe, it's incredibly awkwardness-inducing. I mean, the British can't even take a compliment without apologizing, so imagine what would happen if you had to do just the opposite. Positivity does make for more manageable, pleasant conversations, and there are times when we do need positivity. But Abraham Lincoln said that it was from the tension and debate with his most able rivals that came the strongest resolutions. So I was looking for a French quote to end this, and I looked online. There were twice as many about saying no as there were about saying yes, and the most famous one, Edith Piaf's Non, je ne regrette rien, actually manages a quadruple negative. I'm not sure how many languages can actually do that. So I'll just end with this thought. If you want to survive, by all means use the power of positivity. But if you want to change things, then we need to dare to use negativity.